All right, here we are back with another episode. And Zach, you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, hello everybody. I am Zach Pfeiffer and I started Sovereign.
Awesome. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so we're kicking off. I want to highlight some small businesses this summer, just because I don't know. I feel like you guys don't get enough recognition, and uh, and you go to any terrain park. I was just at Killington yesterday, and everyone is on this new. I'm reluctant to say new wave, but everyone, there's definitely a new style out there. So I want to kind of meet the guys behind it, and you're definitely pioneering some of it. So we'll learn a little bit more about you, and we'll learn a little bit more about the company.
Sounds good.
So
Yeah,
let's start off
absolutely.
with who Zach is. Where are you from originally, and how did we get here?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Northern California in this town called Mount Shasta. It's a super small town. I think the population's like 3,500, might be a little bit more, and that fluctuates in the summer with like busier tourism months and all that. But yeah, small town and like small community of honestly shredders in Shasta, just not many park skiers. So growing up here in the park scene was kind of tough in some respects. In others, it was kind of cool because it allowed for me and my friends to kind of like just do what we wanted without any like influences really shifting our views or making us maybe be like into things that we wouldn't originally be into. Um, but yeah, grew up in Mount Shasta. I'm still here now, but I can get into why a little bit later. But yeah, that's pretty much me, just a NorCal kid who decided to start a business a few years ago.
Sweet. So
Yeah.
were you always a skier, or did you ever delve into the team sports realm?
Um, my parents made me play like soccer when I was growing up, but I never really vibed with team sports for some reason. I don't know why. I think it was like partially being on a team and I didn't like the responsibility of like, oh shit, the ball was kicked to me. People are like waiting on me to kick that ball to them or score or do some of that shit. So that just like brought unwanted anxiety, I'd say. And I
Yeah.
got out of team sports as soon as I could. And then, I mean, I did like race team in high school, but that's a pretty independent sport still, honestly.
Yeah. I think that
Yeah.
anyone who takes it upon themselves to start their own business is kind of has an individualist mindset and kind of likes to
Yeah.
be responsible for themselves. So I figured I'd ask because that's what I suspected.
Yeah, I would honestly agree.
So, um, the only timeline I have for you is like 2017 when the company started.
Mhm.
But what was leading up to that? Did you have an interest in fashion when you were younger? Like what was kind of your teenage years like, and those
Yeah.
transitionary years?
Um, I was definitely into fashion. Well, I didn't really know anything about fashion, but I know I liked it. And I honestly still don't know shit about fashion. But uh, I dated this girl back in high school who she was like just one of those like Tumblr indie girls, Doc Martens and the Chokers, and listens to all the indie music. And so back in high school, I definitely liked like an alternative style. I liked wearing like the tightest pants I could and maybe like a big tall tee on top of those pants, just mixing it up, like kind of being different, kind of being weird, crazy hairstyles and all that. But I didn't really have an outlet for it. I wasn't really making clothes. I don't know. It was just like a hobby type of thing. I never really thought it was gonna go anywhere. Until after high school, I ended up moving to Tahoe right out of high school, right in 2017. And my friend and I actually, we just weren't really vibing with working full time at ski resorts. So we started making just the most rough clothes. Like we would take a pair of pants we got at a thrift store, and then we would use shoe glue to glue on patches to the knees, or like put a little heart here, like whatever. And our friends supported it, and our friends like wanted to wear that shit. And so we were like, whoa, we could actually do this. We had some shirts manufactured, and that was called Lovely Co. And it was honestly really fun for that year or so that we did it. And I wanted to keep doing it with him, but he ended up moving back home to do some schooling. I ended up moving out to Utah, and we just weren't able to do it with each other anymore. So I took it upon myself to start my own thing, and that's when Søvyrn started. Was I think it was like at the beginning of 2018 or so, maybe end of 2017 is when I fully decided to take off on my own and like not do the whole Lovely Co thing anymore, try and get a little bit more legit, find out more tech, like really start sewing shit. And yeah, so I wouldn't say I had any real um hand in like the fashion side of things back in high school, but I was definitely into clothes and like alternative styles.
Hmm. Yeah, and just quickly on that point. So, what were your peers thinking of your different styles when you were in high school? Because
Oh,
I can remember what
people
we would
thought it
say
was,
if somebody was wearing something outlandish in high school.
yeah, people thought it was crazy. Like people thought I was I don't know, tons of mean names and all this shit, but I was friends with everyone in high school, so it wasn't like they were like making fun of me. I mean, they low key were, but I knew they were my homies. And like I didn't really ever have like beef in high school or anything with like that. So it was always chill, but they definitely thought I was kind of weird, I think.
Yeah.
And I think people now are like, oh, it makes sense that he was weird. He is still weird. Like
I mean, just putting it bluntly, like fashion's something that women are usually concerned with. Like, have you ever felt apprehensive delving into the world of fashion since it's typically viewed as like a feminine thing? I mean, now it's definitely starting to shift for sure, but I think,
yeah, oh, for sure. And
ten
people
years
would
ago.
like I don't want to like go into this and say anything offensive because I'm pretty sure I'm not PC at all, but I'm just gonna tell it how it is. But people would always like say I was like gay or whatever for being into clothes, which nothing wrong with that at all. But I had like a girlfriend. I'd like be walking down the high school, like the hallway with my girlfriend, and people would be like, "Oh, just say some dumb shit," and it was just kind of funny because I was like, "Yeah, okay, Mr. Jockey football player, dude. Uh, where's your chick?" And I mean, I don't know. That's mostly like a joke. No one really ever made too much fun of me, or at least it never really stuck. But yeah, for a while, I don't think I was ever apprehensive about getting into it because I grew up liking what I liked, and it's always been kind of like an alternative thing to most people. So that was nothing new. Um, I would say the hardest thing getting into it was just figuring out how to make clothes, like how to really figure out like construction, good materials, like all that is usually the biggest concern to anyone getting into stuff is like, oh fuck, where do I start? Like what is good with this? What materials do I want to use for what I'm making? Where do I find those materials? It's like it's a pretty big, I don't know, endeavor to get into. The iceberg is big under the surface, and you see that once you start diving in. So I'd say that was probably one of my biggest first like roadblocks was just figuring everything out
Hmm.
instead of just starting it. Like I was never really like, oh, what are people gonna think if I do this or this? Because my whole life people have been kind of like, what the fuck are you on? But I kind of like it, honestly. I like being different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said, so if I remember correctly, you moved to Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you started launching. And I just want to get my pronunciation correct. Sovereign.
Yeah, Sovereign.
All right, so that's where
Yeah,
you
no
launched
like
Sovereign.
special, no special accent or anything. People say like, "Oh, is it Sovereign? Sovereign?" Like, no, it's Sovereign, like a white dude. Like,
So yeah, tell us about that. It, I mean, you could either start with the name origin, or you can just start out with the what is it, like the growing pains of starting a new company. However you want to kind of represent it.
word. Um, well, I'll just rip the band-aid off and just explain where the name came from. But and every like my friends say, "Oh, it's so cool," but I'm a little bit embarrassed of it. But I'm just gonna spill the beans. I was taking a lot of like LSD and mushrooms in 2017, I'd say, when I came back from Tahoe. I was just like on this like psychonaut trip and loved it for some reason. I don't know what it was. But I got this great idea one day. I was like, you know what? Fuck work, fuck the government, fuck how the world is run. Like, honestly, getting into like all these conspiracy theories and just like honestly depressing shit that's like, if anyone pays too much attention to it, it's going to bring them down. But it inspired me. It was like, wait, if I just like made a bunch of money, I could eventually like own a compound or own like a huge plot of land and essentially create like a sovereign nation. And so that just that kind of just inspired me to start a business to make that money. Um, and that goal has technically changed over the last few years, and especially with other stuff that's happened in my life. Like that's not the goal, but the goal of like creating a place where me and my friends can make what we want to make and kind of live lives without the restrictions of real life. That still applies, and I still want to do that one day. And I love doing it for the homies and just like making the homies, I don't know, make money off my shit, or they can help me out and they can like do collabs with me, get recognition, like whatever. It's all about like the homies, like the community that you are around. And that's kind of like the biggest thing for me is I just want to like have fun with my friends, and however I'm going to like make the money to do that is how I'm going to do it. And Sob right now is how that's happening.
Mhm.
um but yeah, back to where it came from, sovereign nation. And then I just changed the spelling because I wanted it to be 6 letters. And yeah, I honestly, it's not the most original name. I guess it's original from my brain, but there are like a few other brands called Sovereign that people have brought to my attention after I did it. So I'm like, I'm just gonna run with it until someone sues me, but I don't know.
Well, it's funny. There's also like a cryptocurrency with the same name. I think it's what comes up first when you Google the
No way,
company.
really?
Yeah.
Spelled the
Or I don't know
same?
if it's a cryptocurrency. It could be like some blockchain service. But when I was looking you up, yeah, decentralized finance powered by Bitcoin, Sovereign,
Wait, how's it spelled?
Sovryn.
Okay, RYN. There's
Okay, yeah.
also
So they did transpose those letters. Yeah.
yeah, there's also a skateboard company based in like LA or something called
Hmm.
Sovereign, but I think it's spelled a little bit differently as well.
So at first, did you think that the clothing would help you realize, like selling clothing would help you finance a compound where you could escape the government, or did you think, oh damn, this is going to take a little bit more than selling clothes to raise that much money?
Well, like I said, I was taking a lot of substances back then, so I didn't really think about the actual like what would really go into making that happen. It was more just like the dream, and I started working at it. So now, being let's say yeah, like 4 years later, I'm a little bit smarter, a little bit more evolved. A lot of things have like made me have to grow up, and I've realized that that's not really too realistic anymore. But I can still like, I don't know, I can make a shit ton of money and then buy some land one day and have a fucking mini bike track in the back with a pool and a bunch of go-karts and like all this rad shit for all my homies to play with. So I guess that's still the goal. I just want to keep life fun.
Definitely.
That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said that learning the actual construction of clothing was difficult. So how did you even start? What machine, what equipment did you have to buy? Did you learn through YouTube? How did you kind of delve right into it?
Yeah. Well, that summer when my buddy and I, we like when Lovely Code essentially fizzled out. Um, Actually, I don't want to say fizzled out. It's still an entity, and if my buddy wanted to bring it back, he totally could. But when I stopped doing Lovely Co, I pretty much came home for a few months back to Shasta from Tahoe, and I was just my dad was kind of stoked on what I was doing with my buddy Chan with Lovely Co. And he actually had an old sewing machine that he gifted me that I think was my grandma's, his mom. And so he kind of showed me like the most basics, like here, this is how you zigzag, this is stitch length, this is to go backwards to lock in your stitches. And that was like the extent of his sewing knowledge. He didn't I mean, I was blessed to have him to even give me the sewing machine, but it wasn't like he was showing me how to sew. It was more just like, here is a machine, figure it out. So yeah, I would just watch YouTube videos, and that was just to get the basics, but a lot of it has just been sewing and sewing and sewing and sewing. And like, I've put in fucking so many hours on the sewing machine that it's like shit's just second nature at this point. There's definitely a lot of tech I don't know how to do, but the tech that I have learned and that I've done it hundreds of times. So I'd say it's just all practice. Like practice makes perfect. That's like the most real saying ever. But yeah, pretty much just practicing and then upgrading as I needed to machine wise. I went from like the first one was like an all metal Kenmore from back in the day, probably like an 80s machine, 90s machine. And then after that, ended up getting into the Singer heavy duties, which is just like I'm looking at one right now, but it's actually just like a fully plastic bodied machine, which isn't the best. They're called heavy duties. They sew pretty well, but they're not the best. If you're really just starting, it's a good machine to use, but they break. The best thing about them is the warranty at Walmart. But then after using that for like 2 years, I just didn't. For some reason, it was hard for me to invest in my company at first. It was like, oh, but am I gonna make the money back? Do I want to spend this on this, or do I want to go skiing for a week? Like, fuck, what's gonna be good? After about a few years, after like 2 years of doing that, I finally invested in an industrial sewing machine, big old Juki. This one's built in the 80s as well, but it's like it's gonna outlast me. It's probably gonna be sewing when I'm dead. Um, and that was the best move I ever made. It's made my life so much easier. It's like anyone into sewing that's listening to this, get yourself an industrial. It's like all you need. It's industrial straight stitch and a serger, and you can make anything in the world.
And how much does something like that cost? Because sometimes in starting a business, you really got to you kind of got to just put it all on the line and say, "Yep, this will come back someday."
Yeah. My industrial was 700, and then I had to invest another 300 probably like a month after I got it to put a servo or just replace the servo motor that came on it. But my friends have gotten them for 500 with a brand new motor. Like it's like a sliding scale of probably 400 to $1,000 for a used one, and then if you want to go new, it's going to be probably 12 to 2 grand or so. But it's worth it, and if you're really making stuff, it'll pay itself off.
Mhm.
Everything does. But like I was talking about the Singer heavy duty, which is honestly a pretty capable machine. Those are only like I think it's like 150 bucks, under 200 at Walmart, and they get you into it. They can sew most shit. Some people can sew leather with them if they have the right thread and needles and stuff. But yeah, Yeah, I'd I'd say if you have $1,000, you can start a company for sure.
Mhm. And so I know absolutely nothing about sewing or this entire world.
Yeah.
Um, so the industrial, like, is there any point where there's, a computer is doing a lot of the legwork for you and you're just guiding it, or is it always a hands-on process?
Um, so my machine does not have a computer in it whatsoever. I think some of the newer Jukis do, and I'm not sure what they do on them, honestly. But mine is just this big metal block with gears in it. You can spin some dials and change some settings, but it's really just ran by a motor that spins this huge thing that drives the needle. So simple, super simple, and you just use different foot attachments, and like I've got guides and bias tape feet and all this, like all these crazy little unique tools that help me do what I do, but it's mostly all hands on. You got to have it's pretty crazy. I use both my feet, my right knee, and both hands all the time.
Jeez.
Like the machine is super super involved. Okay, so apart from that, Emmett from Vishnu actually gave me the old embroidery machine that he used to use a few years ago. He gave it to me when I was living in Salt Lake, so that was 2018. So I had it for a while. He used it for a while. Now it's broken, but that thing was pretty that one was totally computerized. You would just put in your design and then it would just like rip it out in 5-10 minutes. It's kind of crazy. I don't know if you've ever seen an embroidery machine run, but it's insane.
I think I've seen, like, I think maybe that's what I was imagining when I was asking
Yeah.
about like the computerized. Yeah, so I've seen that online, videos of that.
Okay. Yeah. So that's mostly just for like art or decorative stuff or just like throwing designs on something. So that's not really like sewing anything structural. I'm pretty sure everything that you see sewn is made on an industrial machine in China or in Pakistan or wherever. And that's honestly one of the biggest things for me getting into clothes that I've realized is that everything is technically quote unquote handmade. It's just one stitch is being done by one person 400 times a day, and then another stitch is being done by another person another 400 times a day. So it's like totally, it's just like a process. It's not one person sitting down and making one jacket in a factory at a time as it is at like higher end like high fashion houses, but it's still all being handmade. You can still find like imperfections on anything you might buy at a store. And there's always that like human aspect of stuff.
But yeah, that is an interesting point, that it's never not made by a person. So at the beginning, obviously, you had a very lofty dream, and it's easy, sitting in your room thinking, oh, you know what, this would be sick, and then actually putting it into action is something completely different. So even though you already had a little bit of experience making clothes, once you started getting running, did you have any doubts, or were you even more inspired that you could actually put into action, even if it was difficult?
um, I would say that I've tried to keep the doubts away because I really try to look at Sovereign as like a big art project instead of a company. Um, it's mostly just like an art project that keeps funding itself and funding like my lifestyle. And that keeps it open to like anything. I can do anything with Saab at any point, and no one's really gonna think like, "Oh, that was weird. He's never done that," because I'm always doing stuff that I've never done. And I think that's kind of one of the. I feel blessed to have it be like that. Um, so doubts, I wouldn't say there's been doubts. There's been times when I've got like a creative block and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, shit, I got to make some money, but I don't want to like just make a bunch of hoodies that I'm not inspired by. Or like, I don't want to put some shit out that's like subpar just to make some money. Like, I got to wait until I'm inspired. And then I'll go find something else, whether it be like walking a train track or like some working on a car or whatever to like take my time up until that creative block is done, and then get back to work.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good transition. So, what is your creative process? I mean, everybody has different methods for it. So, how do you tap into it?
Yeah. Um, I don't know because luckily, like where I'm at now, it's all on my schedule. I'm my own boss. I decide when I want to work, when I want to play, when like I decide everything, which is honestly a blessing and a curse. You got to have a lot of self-discipline for that. And I don't have the greatest self-discipline. Like if my homies are like, "Yo, come to Mammoth," I'm like, "Shit, okay." When I'm still like going broke, I'm like, I'll waste the rest of my money down there, whatever. But yeah. So I'll just get inspired. I'm always inspired to sew. I love using my hands and creating. And honestly, I could sew every day forever. I get burnt out, but I always get back into it. Um, it's just about like doing something new to mix it up. I find that like if I'm getting burnt out on making mittens, it's not that I got to stop sewing and do something else. I just got to start sewing something else. Like I just got to make a backpack or make a jacket, or like I love trying things new that I haven't done before, like new techniques, or just making a piece that is I love making the one of one shit that's like there's never going to be another one. There's never been one. It's just what it is, and that's it. And like, it's not mass produced. And if someone buys it, they're the only person who's going to have it. So I usually just, if I'm feeling or like a mental creativity block, I'll just whip out something weird, just like change it up and get my mind going in a different direction. And apart from that, if I really don't want to sew, like say if I'm just like super burnt out, I'll just have to like take a break and get into one of my other fucking 50 hobbies. Like I'm into mountain biking, cars, trains, graffiti, like tons and tons of different stuff. The list goes on and it's impossible to like manage it all. But yeah, I'll just dive into one of those things. Like I just got a new car and I've been working on that thing the last few days, which it pisses me the fuck off, but it'll be cool one day. And that honestly helps me. Like getting pissed at my car makes me want to go sew, because it's like, oh, sewing is so peaceful and nice, and like everything I want to happens. There's no rusty bolts that are gonna fucking make a 2 hour job turn into a 10 hour job. Like that's the one nice thing about kind of getting away from the sewing machine, is you realize how chill it is when you are on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the one of one, and I think from what I've seen, that's like a big part of the brand. One of one for one of
Hmm.
one individuals.
Yeah.
So has it been like that from the start? Did you ever have any like mass production aspirations?
Um. Well, shit. There's kind of like a tentative idea of like wanting to get some stuff like a lot of stuff manufactured, so people can always go on my site and buy more affordable stuff. Um. But that's being held back because it's a lot of work to make a tech pack. And what I would probably do is like gloves, a unique hoodie, maybe some pants, and maybe a jacket. And then maybe eventually like some trunks, and like I want to have like one of every little aspect of everything that I make be manufactured, so there's always an option to buy on my site. Maybe it's not going to be handmade by me in Mount Shasta, but it's still going to be an original Sovereign design, the same materials used. Like you're going to be getting Sov gloves. They might just not be made by me. So there is like this idea of that, but honestly, with the way I run shit, it's like it's easier for me to just do one of one. It's like I make it, I sell it, I'll make another if someone wants it, maybe. But like you were saying with your how you don't want to have too much inventory that might not sell. It's kind of, I'm in the same boat. Like I don't want to get 50 purple jackets made and sell three of them. Like that
Hmm.
would suck. So why not just make one or two jackets and know that they're probably going to sell. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't going to get jackets if they still wanted them. But at least I didn't just put in hours and hours and hours of work into stuff that's not going to like be profitable for me when I could be doing other stuff with my time. And that's like, yeah, that's the biggest reason why I've stuck to one of ones, other than just liking doing the unique stuff.
Yeah. It seems like every company, like in all these, smaller boutique companies are doing the same thing. It seems like no one wants to keep inventory on hand. Even like ski companies are doing, super limited runs to guarantee that they sell out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that's just like a changing tide in business. I don't know what people used to do. I know that
Yeah.
people used
I
to get
think one of
catalogs sent to their house and you would order through a catalog or go to a
exactly.
retail.
Yeah. I think one of the only smaller companies that's really like keeping inventory is Dan with Arsenic. He keeps a pretty good inventory, I've heard, but I don't know how many other companies. Arsenic does really good for him too, so he's probably got the funds to be able to afford that and not have to worry about selling everything out.
Yeah. On that note, do you ever did you ever reach out to these established guys that were doing something similar to you, saying, "Hey, do you have a tip for this?" Or I know for sure that you've done collabs, but
Yeah,
in terms of like mentorship, have you ever reached out to any of these guys?
yeah, I would say Emmett with Vishnu and Vishnu Items has been the biggest mentor, sensei, whatever you want to call it, to me. He's honestly had my back with everything. I don't even know why since the beginning. Like our relationship literally started with me sending him a message in 2017 being like, yo, I really, really like your skis. I'm just a broke ski bum. Do you think you could sell me a pair for like a little bit cheaper? I think I asked for like some B grade pairs or something like that. And he ended up sending me, I sent him a few $100 and he sent me some mismatched pools and clouds. And I was so stoked. And ever since then, he and I have been homies. And then once I started Sovereign, I was in Salt Lake and he just like became such a big homie through that. He gave me his embroidery machine. He did a collab with me that got me a bunch of like eyes on Sovereign. He's just always had my back, and I feel immensely blessed for Emmett. And he would probably be like, "Shut the fuck up! You've done it all on your own," because he loves saying that shit. But it wouldn't have been possible without him. It really wouldn't. Other than that, I haven't really talked to too many people, too many other people. I'm friends with a lot of them. Like I actually just spent some time with Jackson from Any Tides. He's not the one who sews the stuff, but he's behind a lot of the business. I was just hanging out with him. My buddy Lars does Death Look out in Tahoe. He makes pants and stuff, and yeah, I love the little community of all of us who make this more boutiquey stuff. Like, oh, Depot with lizard stuff, he's super rad too. Like, I don't know, super cool individuals that get into it, and I feel blessed to be a part of this little like tight knit group of us. Yeah,
So I mean, yeah, there's definitely a lot of these companies springing up, and I mean, you just can't help but notice there's like a million of them. It seems like now, but only a few of them doing it really strongly. Is
yeah.
this in terms of finances? Is this like a viable, self-sustaining system, or do you have to pick up other work occasionally
No,
to just survive?
yeah, no. So I I've been living just straight off Saab since 2018, and it's been working pretty good. I mean, I definitely find other ways to make money, and I flip cars, and like the financial thing isn't too much of a struggle, especially with Saab, because it just like it's as much work as I want to put in. I can see cash come from it. It's just hard to get myself to work sometimes when like I said, I'm my own boss. So if I want to go play, it's hard to like hold back. um and on top of that, I had some like shitty shit go down a few years ago. My dad ended up passing away. unexpectedly. And I came into his house. Like I inherited his home, the home I grew up in Shasta actually. And so I've been able to rent out the downstairs of that for the last few years, to a buddy, and he does some extracurricular activities that makes us some money as well. So yeah, it's my only like job has been Sovereign, but money comes in many different ways.
Mhm. Well, I'm very sorry to hear that about your dad.
Yeah.
My condolences. So is that is what prompted you to leave Utah?
No, so I was in Utah. I decided to go to Hood in May of 20 wait. Oh, I guess it was actually 2019. Yeah, so left Hood or left Salt Lake, went to Hood, was at Hood for 2 weeks, having a fucking awesome time, like super rad. Ended up taking like a tab of acid one day and just having like a fucking awesome morning. It was super sick. We went skiing, then we went back to Road 39 and we are getting back from like a little hike. And I get a call from my stepmom, and I was high as shit, but I was like, you should answer this for some reason. And answer. And she's like, Zach, I need to have you sit down. And she says, your dad fell off a cliff and he passed away. And so that kind of ended that Hood trip. And I ended up going back to Shasta, had a bunch of fucking shit to deal with. He didn't have a will, so I had to go through like probate with my house and like lawyers, which costed like fucking $13,000 and a bunch of other like stupid financial shit. But got through it, and now we're here, and I have got like this awesome studio that used to be my dad's garage that was just like filled with shit. And then I ended up living in here with my girlfriend for a second a few years ago, right after it happened, while I rented out my whole house. And yeah, it's just been like this huge evolution. Life's been crazy since then, but I've learned a lot. It's made me grow up for sure.
Yeah, that is intense. So I gotta ask because that's like a worst case scenario when you're tripping.
Yeah.
Have you tripped since, or was that
Oh yeah, I've
pretty
tripped since.
okay? So it wasn't so
No,
I
there's
like if you've
been
heard some stories about like people receiving bad news while in that state, and it is just like they almost never recover from it.
yeah, I mean it definitely like sobered me the fuck up. It would
Mm,
like once that happened, I was like, holy fuck, life just changed a lot. I need to drive home right now. But it's like a 6 hour drive from Hood. So like it was the craziest drive, and no one could be in the car with me. My buddy actually came from my best friend, who was like honestly one of my dad's like godsons, pretty much, like super close with his family. He's close with mine. He lives in Portland, so he ended up driving to Hood immediately, and then like caravanning back with me and my girlfriend. We all had our own cars, which kind of sucked because like 6 hours in the car right after that happened, being alone was like heavy. And still probably like afterglowing was like the gnarliest fucking shit. I can't even like, ugh, like thinking back to that drive is fucked. But yeah, I've tripped since then and had honestly gnarly, way too out there experiences, which have totally made me not that into taking substances anymore. I mean, I probably still will, but I'd say in like apart from that being gnarly, there's been other gnarly shit that I've just like felt on psychs that I don't really go there anymore.
yeah, and so I think that it's funny because we were talking about the creative process, and I think a lot of people think that drugs are like an inherent part of the creative process. Like you have to get to that altered state and pull something from it to be creative. Do you think that's true at all, or do you think that you could, that you'd
I
be
think
inspired either way?
yeah, I think it depends on the person. So I've definitely been in places where I'm like, oh, I need to take this so I feel something new and I can, like, I get like the aspect of like tapping into a new part of your brain and like being able to let this new creativity flow with the use of substances. But if I'm being honest, some of like my best ideas, like the most high I've been, whatever, has like literally been out in nature, being alone, just in the middle of nowhere, or just walking a railroad track, or just like, I don't know. I get these natural highs sometimes that drugs can't even match. It feels like so real. And that's where I feel like I start feeling like creative visions flow in that state rather than like when I'm on shrooms or acid or something, because it just becomes too much. Like maybe I'll have a really good idea for a second on shrooms and I'll be like, oh, I got to write this down. But then immediately after, it's like I'm thinking about something 100 miles away from that. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I think if you can utilize, maybe like if you're microdosing or something, that's good. And everybody's different. Like some people, they take a substance and they make the craziest art ever. Like I've seen some artists that get high as shit and then they create this insane stuff. And then I see some people who look like they're high as shit or look like they should have been when they created something. And you're like, yo, what were you on when you made this? It's amazing. And they're like, oh, I drank my coffee that morning or whatever. And or like I went for a good run and then I went and created this. And it's like, oh wow, okay. You did that sober.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like I've had that exact same thinking with Frank Zappa, the
Mm,
musician.
okay,
His
yeah.
music just so out there, it's insane. And then you read his autobiography, and he was like sober, and he
Yeah.
didn't take drugs, and it was just
Yeah. Some
like
people are just
how?
born a little bit out there for sure. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think I honestly am one of those people, like, who knows, it might be like a learning disability or what, but like there is something about some like psyches or some brain chemistries that like you can straight up get high off anything and like get that creative like burst through just like reading a book, through drinking some like orange juice. Like some people, especially living in Shasta, I meet the most sensitive people, and not sensitive in like an emotional way, but like they'll they'll like feel energies, or they'll feel like, oh, the vibe is off in here, or I just took half of a magnesium pill and I'm like boosting right now, or like some crazy shit like that. You're like, what the fuck? You're feeling that? Yeah, I don't know. Everybody's different.
that's funny. So I mean,
Yeah.
so a lot of your uh, it seems like your company and your creative process is solo. What are the collabs like for you, working with another brain and working together to create something? How does that process work for you?
Um, Usually pretty good. I've never really had a collab go bad. Um, but I haven't done that many. I've done them with my friends where it'll be like a homie's staying at my house for a week and they can sew. So we do like a little collab on some hats or mitts or whatever. And they're using my patterns and it's all kind of like my style. I just let them go off on whatever their little art form is that's gonna add to it. Um, but yeah, I would say like Emmett and I got some goggles in the works right now, which we haven't really talked about it too much, but I went on a street trip with him earlier this season and we were shooting around ideas. And I think it really just takes some dialogue, dialing in what we both want and like share, like trying to share a vision. Um, yeah, I don't really have any real creative process to it though. I don't have any real creative process to anything, honestly. It's just this whole thing is just me winging it. Back to you saying it's mostly me. It really is mostly me, but I do get a lot of help from homies when they come through my place, or if they're driving through, they're always trying to help. And like, for anyone listening to this who has helped, thank you so much, because the help is like what makes it really work. Like last night I was making this backpack, and while I was making the backpack, my friends were printing shirts for me. So like I got 10 hoodies done while I was making this backpack, and I didn't even have to touch them, which is just super rad. Like that type of shit helps so much. And that's kind of where I want to see it go, is not just my thing. Like everyone, so many people are like, oh, you're the dude who does Søvyrn. It's all you, right? That's so cool. Da, da, da. And I hate it. I hate that it's all me. I don't want it to be like this individualistic, like, oh, it's Zach Pfeiffer and his art. Like, I don't want it to be like that at all. I want Sav to be a crew that makes movies and has a crazy community behind it, and like does rail jams and has like fuck parties and premieres and all this shit. Like, I don't want it to just be me. I want it to be like all the homies doing it together, and like everyone feeding off of it, and everyone getting paid, and everyone like living their best lives off this thing that makes it so we don't have to work on anything but what we want to work on. Like one of my best buddies, Tristan Steen, he's at Sony Handycam online. One of my biggest dreams is to like give him a job filming Sav full time. Like he's a big filmer. He loves filming. That's all he wants to do. It's his like, and he's a fucking really good filmer, best filmer I know. And like, I just want to make it possible for him to make whatever 50 grand a year, whatever, just off filming videos for me. Like, I want to pay him good, better than any other filmer is paid in the game. Like, I mean, maybe not Red Bull money, but like, I want to make it his job, and I want to make other shit my homies' jobs. I want to make pro models for people eventually that will get them paid. Like my buddy Andrew Branch, we just started doing some gloves for him, and like I haven't been able to pay him that much because we haven't sold that many pairs. But it still feels good to like pay a homie for all they got to do is ski, and like their skiing is what sells the items, which is sick. Yeah, that's the biggest goal, and that goes back to like the whole sovereign nation thing. Is it doesn't have to be like a physical place that is a sovereign nation, but it could be like this almost like metaphysical idea of like this brand is allowing us all to live the lives we want to live apart from like society's rules and their fucking, you got to do this, you got to get a job, go to college, work 9 to 5. Like, I don't know. I think I can keep me and all my friends away from that. At least that's the goal.
That's awesome. I think that was a good point to transfer over to viewer questions.
Okay.
I think that was a good summary of your vision for the future. That's awesome. So, first viewer question. It's the one that we've been sticking with. It's not, I don't even know if I could consider a viewer question at this point because it's just like a recurring segment. What is your hot take in skiing? And if you want, you could do in fashion.
Ooh, fuck. Damn. Well, honestly, I think having any sort of ego in skiing or thinking you're better than anyone else in this fucking little sport is so whack. Like, some people, oh my God, I had to leave Utah because of all the cool guys. Like, if you think you're better than someone because you can fucking dub 12 or something like that, and someone else can't, it's so lame. It's like even worse with the people that can like almost dub 12 and those that can dub 12. It's like, it's so funny. Like, if you think you're some hot shit because you strap on skis and you're good, or you got like, it's the same thing as Instagram followers, or your parents have money or whatever. Like, if you think you're better than anyone else on this planet because you do something, you're so whack. Like, everybody's equal. Sure, some people can do things that others can't, but whoever you're comparing yourself to that can't do what you can do do fucking 50 things better than you that you haven't even thought of. Like, I don't know. I hate all that ego shit and just like thinking you're better than others. And there's a lot of that in skiing.
Yeah.
I guess in fashion too. I don't really have any hot takes for fashion though, because I don't know anything about fashion. I just like it.
You just
I
know
honestly
skiing.
feel like a minnow in like a pool of sharks with like everyone that's really into fashion. I'm like, yeah, I make this shit and I try to do it all like out of my own brain so no one can ever criticize what I'm doing. I don't know.
That's funny. All right, good take.
Cool.
Something we've definitely heard before about the scene in Utah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any moment that stands out that fits that example?
Oh, dude. For some reason, pulling up there and riding V's, like, don't get me wrong, V's have like made me meet some of the coolest people ever, and I'm never gonna not ride them. Hopefully, until like Emmett just stops making them. But when I pulled up on V's in 2018 or 17 or whatever in Utah, and like got to the top of the my jumps or some shit, it was just this crew of kids. I know who they are now. I'm not gonna say any names, but they just like, and they all followed me on the gram and like would message me and like be chill. They all just like look at me, don't say shit. I'm like, yo, what's up, guys? How's it going? Just made it out here. Like this West Coast kid with dreadlocks, like trying to be chill. No one was chill. Like I think they just saw my skis and they're like judging me, which is stupid because it's like that was I don't know. It's just like that cool guy shit is so dumb. You'll meet people at parties and they'll be cool because they're all fucked up, and you'll like exchange names, talk for a few minutes or whatever. Then you see them on hill the next day and they're with some like other homies or some like rad skiers and they act like they don't know you. That shit is so whack, and I'm sure so many kids can relate to it. And I don't know. I hope I've never done that to a kid, and if I have, it's because I was stoned and I didn't know you were like talking to me or something, or I was like too high to like communicate, which has definitely happened before. Like sometimes I think there's a balance between like us skiers trying to cool guy each other and us skiers being like so fucking stoned that we're just like socially awkward and like can't fucking talk. Definitely been there, and it's like get on the lift with someone who's like stoked on sob shit, but I had just faced a spliff, and they're just trying to talk to me about it, and I'm like, "Thank you so much, dude, so rad." And then there's just like a fucking huge gap of silence because I'm just in my head like, what do I say? What do I say? I don't want to seem weird. Oh my god, this guy knows who I am. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Just like anxiety all the way up.
Oh, that's funny, dude. All right, next one. This was kind of a two people asked a pretty similar question. So N, what was your first item of clothing you made slash sold? And then Mac asks, who owns your first piece?
Ooh, fuck. I think I probably own the first piece, potentially, or like my mom or something. I like to keep firsts, but wait, what was the first question? What was my first piece?
Yeah.
Um, I, that's hard. I used to like modify a bunch of thrifted stuff, but I would say my first sewing piece, like real piece that I sewed, I used to make these little bags that were about the size of a tree fort. And same, they were pretty much just a modified tree fort and not to the build quality of tree forts whatsoever. But they were just like bags, like festy bags that you would just like wear around your neck. And that was with Lovely Co. And then with Sovereign, I would say the first like fully sewn piece I made were these pants that were made out of like bed sheets, so super thin. Like they've turned out like scrubs, but I thought for some reason that they would sew up well. Poor construction. Actually, decent construction, poor materials, and poor thread. They never like popped, but I was always like scared to wear them, so they just sit in a drawer at my house now. Um, but yeah, I think that's about it. I think I was just like making those bags, and I made those pants, and then I started making the mittens. But everything apart from that was not fully constructed by me. It would be like I would thrift blanks and then modify them, which I still actually do, and which is actually super, super fun. And I recommend to anyone trying to get into it is just buy your blanks at thrift stores, because then you're like supporting slow fashion. You're not like buying new stuff and bringing more waste into the world. And all of your items are going to be one of one, because it's hard to find the same items at thrift stores.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So speaking of one,
Yeah.
this is kind of offshoot of it, and it's not even a viewer question, but do you remember every piece you make? Like if you see someone in the wild or online with the piece, does that bring you back to being in your studio? Like, oh yeah, I remember making that. That little detail
Um,
was a pain in the ass.
vaguely, vaguely. Like it depends. If it's pants or like a backpack or a jacket, I'll totally remember. But with the mitts, like I've made so many mittens that I cannot remember all of them. Like people roll up on me and be like, "Yo, you made these," and I'll be like, "Oh shit, that's a fire colorway. Yeah, I did that." And yeah, there's that. I do not remember. It's over 1,000 items that I've made so far, so there's like a lot. There's a lot of
Yeah,
shit out there.
yeah. All right, we got two more people asking very similar questions. Reed and Floster, favorite brands in skiing other than your own?
Favorite brands in skiing other than my own. Vishnu and Vishnu items. And this is in no like list type style. This is just a random list. No one's at the top, no one's at the bottom. But probably Vishnu items, Vishnu, reevaluate, fucking lizard stuff, death look, joystick, like so many, and I'm forgetting so many. Damn, are there any more off the top of my head that I can remember? I'm honestly like not. I'm not remembering them all off the top of my head, but the homies know I fuck with them. Like
Yeah.
they're all like literally every small business, any tie. It's like everything. I love everybody who does it, and like I think my favorite thing about all the different brands is that we honestly all like help each other. Like I'll let people know if they ask questions. I'll like let them know where to buy fabric or thread or a machine or whatever. Help people look for stuff, and like if I ask questions to them, they'll help me out. Like I've never had someone not tell me a little piece of advice. Like no one's ever been like gatekeeping with their tech, which is super cool. Which low key sometimes I feel like it hurts us all sometimes, but in a lot of ways it just helps, and we all got to evolve more if that's how it's going to be. But kind of what I'm talking about in that respect is everybody in skiing that makes pants for a little bit was using like ripstop nylon, because one person started using it or figured out it was good, and then another person was like, ooh, I want to use that. And then I know I asked Riley from Reevaluate. I was like, dude, where'd you get this material? It's fire. He told me, I got some. And then after that, I don't know. There's just been tons. That's what any tides uses. Like I'm trying to get away from the ripstop nylon now, because it's literally like 5 of us use the same fucking material, and like we pretty much make the same pants, just put different tags on them, and like it's a slightly different shape. Um, but yeah, so it's cool that we can all help each other out. It also makes us have to kind of be on our shit though, so we're not all doing the same stuff all the time.
Yeah. Um, Kit Chat Bars takes it a different route. What is a
Yeah.
clothing company you despise?
Clothing company I despise.
Or I
Ooh.
mean, they also asked like what made you want to make clothes and gear? So like was there any point where you were just like uninspired by the state of like fashion and skiing?
Um, I don't think I've been uninspired. I think I was just like a cheap ass and never wanted to like buy gibberish or buy like the expensive stuff, which is funny because now I make expensive shit. I feel kind of bad about it sometimes, but it's also what you got to do. But I was just like not trying to buy the expensive stuff, so I was like, damn, I should just make that. Especially like that's how I started with the mitts. I was like, I want the craziest mitts, but I don't want to buy the craziest mitts. I want to make them just so they're free, pretty much. But fuck, damn, I don't like talking shit on any companies, but probably like it's not even a. I don't hate any ski companies, honestly, but like H&M or like Nike or I mean not even really Nike. Nike does some good stuff. I just don't like fast fashion. Like the shit that's just pumping out so much waste into the world and using shitty fucking materials and shitty dyes on their materials and yada yada yada. Like I don't fuck with that shit. I'm just gonna do the opposite of their question, and I'm just gonna say my favorite company ever in anything is probably Patagonia, just because of Yvon Chouinard's idea and like his whole background with it, and like I don't know if you've read or heard "Let My People Go Surfing." It's his book. It's the guy. It's like the founder of Patagonia's book, and he just goes into like his business model and what he does to make it like stay like what he does to stay true to that and everything. And he's so hardcore with like the renewable resources and like keeping it all green that he'll fucking open up new factories in like whatever country it might be in, but he'll go there, make sure that down to the soil they're using is like organic and not gonna fuck anything up. And if it does start fucking shit up, he makes it right. Like he'll if they accidentally use a dye that made someone get sick or whatever, they're gonna get that person the help they need to like be okay again because he feels so bad that his company accidentally put someone in harm. And so yeah, that's I don't know. I really like the companies that care a lot and don't care about the money. They care about making good products that are going to last for people. And I just think if you keep it real with your company, it's going to pay off for you like it did for Yvon Chouinard. But it takes time too. Like he took fucking 10 years before Patagonia really got established. And by established, I mean like kind of in stores, kind of having their stuff a little bit dialed. Like it was 10 years of pretty much, I think like what I'm doing right now, just like R&D and like, yeah, it's a company, but it's like, it's a very liquid company. It can be whatever it wants. There's no set in stone way of solve. And I think that's why Patagonia also worked the way it did because he didn't just make fishing gear or just climbing gear or anything like that. Like sure he had seasons, but he kept making good gear for all the different aspects of what he was into or others were into and kind of grew as this entity instead of like just a climbing brand. And I think that's why Patagonia is so big now and why like frat boys want to wear like Patagonia puppies and shit now. Like people that are never going to climb a mountain love Patagonia because it's like this image of like being badass or whatever.
Cool. I'm gonna get that book. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's also on audiobooks.
Even
Um,
better.
yeah, that's how I listen to it. My buddy Joe Bird put me onto it.
Yeah. JG Ski, favorite trick that feeds your soul lately this season?
Shout out Yori. Shit. Nolly Bio Sevs or like Misty Fives off like tiny jumps or just a good switch to switch.
Yeah, I like that.
Switch lip to switch is the best trick ever.
The most like I loved doing my research on you and finding out that you were actually sick at skiing. Because it was like, oh, this dude's like actually doing something in skiing and he's gnarly. So I mean, I don't mean to gas you up too much, and you're gonna play it humble, but dude, it's awesome. Like I think it's super
Appreciate it.
sick. I think the reason I'm thinking that is because I was telling like I went to Killington yesterday,
Oh
and
yeah.
uh, and like the vast majority of skiers,
Yeah.
including myself to a certain degree, are just bad. Like a lot of people can't do much on skis. So when you see somebody that's not known for being a pro and being really good, is known for something else, and you find out that they're also very good at skiing,
Sure.
it's always a really pleasant surprise.
Cool. Well, that's fire. I'm glad to know you think of me.
So Loch Ness Monster, he had the two-parter. What's your favorite thing to make, and how do you get sponsored? And
How do you get sponsored?
and
Okay.
that's also, do you even sponsor people?
Okay. Okay. Get sponsored by me.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, my favorite thing to make. Honestly, I love making backpacks right now. Backpacks and jackets are probably my favorites. The backpack is just super fucking rad because it's like they can be as tech or as simple as you want. And it's pretty simple. Like people look at a backpack and they're like, "Oh, I could never," but it's more simple than most shit I make. Um, and then jackets, I just I just started making jackets, so that's why I like those. I think because they're pretty fun and it's like kind of some new tech, and I'm messing with like different patterns and stuff. Um, and then okay, how do you get sponsored? Um, Honestly, the only people I really sponsor right now are my homies, or like I've got some homies out in Europe that I send some gear to. Um, but it's really because like they just ended up. I actually sold or sent some pants to Kai Mahler. He showed some interest in some gear, so I sent some pants to him. They ended up being too big for him, and then he gave them to this homie Nicola Bollinger. Um, and so he was rocking those for a while, and then I ended up just like sending him some other stuff, I think. And yeah, there's a few people that I hook up. I think that if you wanted to be sponsored by Sav, shoot me an edit, but don't expect much because it is like a one man army pretty much right now. Like everything's one of one. It's more like I think you should want to wear Sav because you want to like wear something one of one and unique instead of wanting to wear Sav to be sponsored. Because that's what it is. It's like the gear that I make is not like, let's say, wear leathers. Also, back to a company that I don't like, probably wear leathers. um, now that I'm thinking about it, but like them, they can just like manufacture fucking 500 sets of gloves and give 300 people gloves and get all this content and act like they're like this company that's killing it. And I'm sure they are killing it, but it's kind of fabricated when you send out more than half of your inventory potentially to like riders and basically just give it all away for free and say like, oh, this is good product. They actually want to rep this pretty much. Like when it's just free shit, like I'd wear free shit. Fuck, doesn't matter if it's nice or not. And most of that stuff like dyes your hands blue and like is kind of weird. But yeah, I don't know. Saab doesn't really sponsor unless you're like really my homie and I really fuck with your skiing. And I can even fuck with you skiing and not be in a place to sponsor because like I said, it's pretty much a one man army, especially with like the gloves and the pants and the jackets. Like if you want some goggles or like a hat, like the manufactured stuff I have, hit me up and I could probably send you stuff if you want to rep. But the stuff that I sew, I try and make a little cash off of just because it is like time and effort for me. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And last question, Rolf, advice for aspiring clothing creators.
Um, nice. I'd say just do it. Nike. No. Yeah, I well, in all seriousness, just doing it really is like the biggest thing, is just getting started. So many people talk about what they want to do and have all these big ideas, and they say like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this, but then you never see them do it. And you're like, what happened to those ideas? Like, think, like you hear a homie talking about something and then 2 3 years goes by and you're like, dude, if you started that when you were first talking about it, you'd be making money, you'd have a following, you'd have like support, like all this shit. You just got to start. None of that stuff is going to come until you start. And I think that's the biggest thing for people, is um they want acceptance or approval before they even do anything. And you got to take that first leap before you get any of that shit. And like, maybe it's not going to work, but it probably will if you're like putting your heart into it and being real and like, I don't know. Yeah, keeping it real. I think that's the biggest thing, is like people just gotta, like I was saying, like do it for the art and do it because you like making clothes and you're inspired by the clothes you're making, instead of just like wanting to throw a logo you created on a t-shirt to say, oh, I'm a clothing creator or whatever, and to like make a few bucks off your homies. Like you got to do that shit because you want, and people can see. Like I can see it when someone's just trying to make some money and when someone's like really into the stuff they're selling. I can see it. Anyone else can see it. Like it's pretty easy to see, honestly.
Yeah, I like that. I heard a piece of advice the other day. If you're gonna fail, fail now. You know,
Yeah,
like if you're gonna don't talk about something for 5 years
exactly. Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
oh, and then turns out you're not even good at it, so you're gonna fail 5 years after hyping it up. Just do
Yeah,
it, and then if you suck at it, you'll fail now, and then you can move on, or you'll be good
exactly.
at it. You know?
Exactly. And like, honestly, one of the biggest things that I've found in the last few years is like the literally that, like, yeah, fail now. Like, I used to think, like, when I was 18 or so, straight out of high school, I honestly thought, oh, I want to start a company when I'm like 30. I want to ski bum it for the next 10, 12 years, just go experience life and like go out and do all this random shit and just be a bum, like live broke as fuck. And that was my goal before my dad passed. I just wanted to be a skier. Like literally growing up my whole fucking life, all I ever thought was I'm going to be a skier. Never ever thought I was going to go to college, nothing like that. And not because like my dad couldn't send me to college or whatever, but just because like that's not me. Like I didn't want to do it, and I knew I didn't want to do it, and I didn't know how it was all going to work out. And now that I'm 22 and I'm like making it all work, I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I never thought I was going to go to college, because I was literally never going to go to college. And maybe I'll take classes eventually. I'm not saying college is bad, but yeah, I think it's just about starting, getting the ball rolling, and like seeing if it's something that's going to work or if it's something you got to tweak. Um, because fuck, if I would have started Sov when I was 30, I bet it wouldn't work at all. I'd be a crusty old dude who's like trying to jump into the ski market. That's like not gonna happen. But instead, I was, I guess, smart and started it at 18 or 19, and now I'm here and I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but it like works out. So I'm like, okay, well now I've got this thing that works, and I'm blessed that I started it that early, because now I've got like, I'm like a whole 10 years ahead of what I was thinking I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
There's also that Yvon Chouinard approach, is like the first 10 years of his business was just like trying out a bunch of different shit, being fluid with everything, like keeping keeping the doors open to like a ton of different options. And then he eventually like dialed it in and figured out what he wanted to do and started making real money for the company. But it wasn't this like, oh, I'm going to do this and this is exactly how it's going to be. And everyone can just like fucking deal with it. It's like they were like, okay, what does everyone want? Like, I don't know, like what's going to work for everybody? How can we make these like crampons or ice axes or whatever in a way that like you guys want? Like I'm not going to make a shit ton this year because I know you guys are going to want something different next year. So here, you really rad climbers, you take this gear out, bring it back, and next year we'll tweak it, but you can still rep this as Patagonia. We're just not gonna like sell it to a ton of people. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is just keep it slow, and like slow and steady wins the race. I don't know. Not trying to be anything that I'm not.
Yeah. Cool. Zach, thank you for coming on today. You want to plug anything before you get out of here?
I just want to say thank you to like everybody that supports Sav, because it's honestly huge. Like, you guys make my life so good, and like all the support makes me so happy, and like makes my life worth living, because there's a lot of times that I'm like, oh, shit doesn't matter. I just want to fucking go be a bum and ride trains. But then like someone will hit me up and be like, dude, I love this jacket, or I love these pants, or whatever. And I'm like, damn, okay, I should keep doing that. But I can't throw it all away. So yeah, thank you to everybody that fucks with Sav. Like, it's like a big family. Like, honestly, if you fuck with Sav, I think of you as like the fam. And all my homies that have been helping me out lately, like in Shasta. I just actually had my two of my best buddies, Mason Fitzmaurice and Chris Luano. They just cleaned out my whole fucking garage. I went down to Mammoth like a week ago and just got a call one afternoon from Chris. He's like, yo, check out what we did. And like does a pan around my studio. They literally put in like 10 hours of work and like cleaned the whole thing up and made it dialed. So thank you, boys. Chris is actually hungover, sleeping on my couch in my house right now, but he'll probably hear this at some point and be stoked. So, yeah, and yeah, just big shout out to all the homies. Emmett from Vishnu, especially, Sav wouldn't be what it is without you. And yeah.
Sick. And where can they find all your stuff?
If you guys want to check out the stuff, Søvyrn69.com will get you to the website, or just check it out on Instagram. Insta's like the main place where I post stuff like daily on the story or whatever. I want to get away from that. Eventually, everything on the site would be rad. But yeah, Søvyrn69.com, baby.
Sick. All right. Thanks again.
Yep. See ya.